So greetings from Pennsylvania once again, and we have finally made it out here to the Battle of Bushy Run. Been meaning to get here for a while. We tried last summer, but the place was closed when I got here. There had been some tornado damage, which I wasn't aware of, and everything here was closed, so I had to put that off. But we finally made it. So we're going to be closing out our French and Indian War / Pontiac's War series in this episode here today. The visitor center is still closed. I'm looking for a map somewhere. There was no map online either. I'm looking for a trail called the Edge Hill Trail. That's where the battle actually occurred. Alright, I'm kind of excited to be here. Finish out this series. Alright, so now just looking for the trail I need. Up there, I believe that's the visitor center. I parked out up there. It's a big parking lot. You can still see some of the tornado damage here. A lot of trees down everywhere. But I think, kind of thought this might be my trail, but I do see, here's the Iroquois Trail. I thought I saw the word Edge Hill down here too. Iroquois Trail, Edge Hill Trail, and the Flour Sack Trail. So that's kind of, I guess we'll see here. Like, there's no map here or anything. So is that the Edge Hill Trail, I guess? That's the Flour Sack Trail. Oh no, there's even an arrow here. Go this way. Alright. Alright, so I think I'm going the right way now. The Edge Hill Trail takes you up to where the battle actually occurred, up on the hill called Edge Hill. So yeah, it's been quite a road to get here. I mean, literally this morning it was about 3.5 hour drive. But anyway, in our whole series, it was quite a journey to get here. So I'm going to do a little bit of I'm going to find a spot to sit. I'm going to give you a recap of this series quick. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time doing it. I don't want to bore you to death, but just give you a quick recap of what brought us to this spot here at Bushy Run. I think it'd be good to have a little bit of review. And that'll set the stage for this battle, which is a very important and decisive battle. But it is a beautiful day. It's March 10th. It's going to feel like spring today. Temperatures in the 60s. The birds are singing. This is great. There's all kinds of trails. Oh, there's a squirrel. At the Battle Bushy Run. Alright, so this looks like a pretty good spot. Tell you what, this is a beautiful spot, beautiful place. They have red squirrels here too. We saw a gray squirrel earlier, but they have red squirrels here too. I'd like to tilt you up just a little bit more here. Yeah, so here we go. So what brought us here to the Battle Bushy Run? Because we are out here in, I believe we're in Westmoreland County, just not too far from Pittsburgh. So, get my little cheat notes out here. All this kind of stuff written about the battle and things like that. So yeah. So this goes back to the 1750s, obviously. We started this series. I think we started with the Penns Creek Massacre. But I think I mentioned in another video, I wish I would have started this more in a chronological order, this series. But anyway, going back even before the 1750s, this area was known as the Ohio River Valley area, because the Ohio River starts down over there in Pittsburgh. And the French and the British were both vying for, supremacy or control of this area, valuable trading routes and things like that. Any territory you could control was more power. I think the British kind of had a presence here first, over where Fort Pitt, in Pittsburgh was earlier. I think there's something called Trent's Fort, just a little trading post. But the French came down, started building Fort Duquesne. In 1753, Washington made a trip up to this area to see what the French were doing. He came up from Virginia, George Washington. He came up from Virginia to check things out, to talk with the French a little bit. Told them they had to leave. Of course, they didn't leave, because he was working for the colony of Virginia at the time. And Virginia actually claimed this part of Pennsylvania back then, so they considered it to be part of Virginia. There's some issues there between Virginia and Pennsylvania and Maryland, all about this area. So yeah, but he came back in 1754, and there was that skirmish at Jumonville Glen, where the French commander was killed, and there was some controversy about that, but then he had to quick retreat, built Fort Necessity. Then the French attacked that, and they allowed Washington to surrender, but he had to leave the area. So we visited all that stuff in the past. So that's where the conflict started. The Jumonville Glen skirmish was kind of the start. In fact, some people refer to it as the first shots there, what in some ways could be considered the First World War, because this, here we call it the French and Indian War, but worldwide it was known as the 7 Years' War. It kind of was in some ways the First World War. But moving on, I'm going to try to keep this as brief as possible. I don't want to have a 20-minute, I could, anyway. But yeah, then in 1755 was Braddock's campaign. General Braddock came over from Britain. He started down in Virginia. They built Braddock's Road to try and capture Fort Duquesne for the British. We traveled that route as much as we could through Pennsylvania. That was a tough day. It was interesting though. But you know how that did not work at all. He ended up being ambushed. We talk about Braddock. I don't have a high opinion of him, but they never even made it to Fort Duquesne, but they got defeated. Braddock died out there. We visited his grave. He's still out there. That didn't work. And then because of that failure, that's when the Indian raids started over in eastern Pennsylvania, where I live. All those massacres started coming. We talk about the Blue Mountain, the boundary between the settlers and the Indian country. They started pouring over that mountain, those mountain ranges. Of course, Pennsylvania is woefully unprepared for that. We didn't really have a militia due to the Quakers that were kind of in control. But we started Penn's Creek Massacre, and then there was multiple ones after. And then, of course, that's when they started building those defense forts along the frontier. And then, I think this kind of beautiful ambiance here. All the birds are singing here. It's been a super cold winter. Anyway, I'm getting off track. But then things started to slow down a little bit. In 1758 was the Forbes expedition. General Forbes led that expedition. We did that. Oh, there was the Kittanning expedition before that too. We did. But the Forbes expedition ended up capturing Fort Duquesne. They built a new fort there called Fort Pitt. There were some other French forts out there too. We visited those this past summer. They were kind of connector forts to get down to Fort Duquesne. But the war in Pennsylvania kind of ended in 1758, the Treaty of Easton, treaty with the Native American Indians. Conrad Weiser, we've talked about a lot on this channel, was key to that treaty. It didn't end. The war didn't end around the world, though. I mean, it literally was fought around the world, and Spain joined in at one point. But in 1763, that war kind of ended. But then, I think it was Amherst was his name, the general in charge of those terms. That he put heavy terms of surrender on the Native Americans. He was warned not to do that, but he did it anyway. The Indians rebelled, and we have what was called Pontiac's Rebellion, which is kind of a separate conflict, but also part of the French and Indian War. But and then in 1763, those raids over the mountains in eastern Pennsylvania continued again. All those massacres started back up again. But then again, they captured those three other French forts mentioned. Were captured by the British, eventually turned to British forts, but the Indians recaptured those. They laid siege to Fort Duquesne, and that's where this comes into play. Yeah, so just a quick, super condensed version of the French and Indian War, Pontiac's War. Like I said, you could do it a whole hour-long video, anyway, but yes, that leads us to here. So August 5th and 6th, so Colonel Henry Bouquet, who was part of the Forbes expedition. We talk about him a lot in that video. I think I did a whole separate video about him. Of course, Forbes passed away at the end of Forbes expedition. I think he made it back to Philadelphia, but the whole Forbes expedition, he had a serious stomach problem, perhaps cancer or something like that. So he was out of the scene by now. So Henry Bouquet kind of took things over. But he was charged with the mission to relieve Fort Pitt, which had formerly been, Fort Duquesne. So he left Carlisle, PA, just across the Susquehanna River from Harrisburg, with 500 British soldiers. And he traveled the Forbes Road that was built earlier in 1758. So this was on August 5th and 6th of 1763 that he began this campaign to relieve Fort Pitt from the siege that the Native Americans had around that fort. Did I mention that it is an absolutely beautiful morning out here? But on the morning of August 6th, 1763, it would not have been very peaceful out here. A lot of musket fire, a lot of screaming, yelling. So if I am on the correct trail, Edge Hill Trail, I think this might be Edge Hill up here. It looks like the trail's gonna wrap around. And up there is where the British built a small fort, what they call a redoubt. They built that on August 5th. That's when they first encountered the Native American forces. Kind of a neat spot right here. This looks like a little quarry. There's a road up here too, so I'm wondering. Anyway, I seen their trail over there. One thing this park is lacking is a map, to be honest. But anyway, it's a beautiful place. Even if you're not into history, this is a beautiful place to come and hike. It's free. Alright, kind of out in the open, right next to the road. I think it's Route 993. Looks like there's parking over there and more trails. I'm seeing some of our historical signs. So maybe this might be Edge Hill. This looks like I have something up there. Like some kind of monument. Yeah, here's the board. So, a news of uprising, that's Pontiac's rebellion. There's Amherst. He ordered Colonel Henry Bouquet to Fort Pitt to lift the siege. Tells what his men consisted of from the British forces, about 700 soldiers. Includes some civilians, 60,000 pounds of flour, cattle, sheep. He had bad road conditions. Yeah, his plan was to march to Bushy Run station, rest the troops, and then set out for Fort Pitt under cover of night. Well, things didn't work out quite that way. That's kind of a cool picture showing you have all the horses carrying the materials. Like I guess that's all the flour they're carrying. Looks like the flour is spilling out onto the trail, but anyway. Alright. Yes, I'm pretty sure this is going to be the site of our little fort or a redoubt that they built quickly in the evening of the 5th. Yeah, they were attacked on August 5th. The Indians caught wind of his arrival, and they sent a force out of roughly maybe the same number. We don't know exactly. And his forces encountered them in this area. They were able to fend them off till the evening, but then they built like a little, what they call a little fort or a redoubt for protection. They put their wounded and supplies inside there and prepared for the next day when they knew the fighting would continue. Yeah, there's Bouquet. We took posts last night on the hill. There we encircled a hole and covered our wagons with flour bags. That's just the evening of the 5th, but yeah. Yeah, at the top of the Edge Hill, soldiers stacked flour bags in a circle to protect the wounded and moved the pack animals and supplies into the natural ravine. The rest of the men were posted in defensive positions on the brow of the hill to repulse the attack. So I guess these are supposed to be the flour bags. I was wondering, when I was down coming up the trail, I thought, is that still snow up here? But no, these are supposed to be flour bags. Probably just concrete. Yeah, but they're flour bags. Yeah, they do say flour on them. Yeah, that's kind of a neat idea. I mean, they brought the flour to eat, but they used it, because the bullets from the Indians would hit the flour bags, not the men. It's a cool idea. We'll check that out in a moment too. Just a quick look at the rest of this. An officer at the battle wrote, "In an American campaign, everything is terrible. The face of the country, the climate, the enemy. There's no refreshment for the healthy, nor relief for the sick. A vast, inhospitable desert, unsafe and treacherous, surrounds them. For victories are not decisive, but defeats are ruinous. And simple death is the least misfortune which can happen to them." Wow. Because that's describing this area back in the 1750s. This Ligonier blue rock placed by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to mark the site of the Flour Bag Fort during the Battle of Bushy Run. I never heard it called that. When I was researching it, nobody called it that, but there you go, the Flour Bag Fort. Oh yeah, here's more stuff. Just a plan of the battle down there. can see the fort right there. Yeah, so this is Edge Hill, or Flour Bag Fort. So I'm pretty sure the natives were attacking from, Pittsburgh is out that way, so they'd be coming from this way, roughly. So what happened at that battle? Like I said, they were attacked on the 5th, August 5th, but the decisive battle didn't occur till the following day on the 6th. And there's two different accounts of what happened at that battle. Looks like our trail goes, we'll go into here. Once again, it's not really marked. And we'll just go this way. Kind of way you need to go anyway to get back to where I parked. So the two accounts of this battle are very similar to each other. They don't really, disagree with each other at all. The first account is the more basic one. Just says, that the tribes, they attacked the following morning, but they themselves were ambushed. The British had some positions out, or some sentries out waiting for them. They kind of flanked the Indians. They came in from the sides, and then there was a main assault from the main column at the fort, and then the Indians retreated in disarray. The second account is a little more detailed. It says that Bouquet deliberately weakened a part of the front line, and when you do that, the tribes saw that weakness. And what often happens is they rush into, because they see that weakness, let's rush in there. Well, it was a trap. The weakness was fake, and there was Bouquet's fiercest fighters were waiting for them in that trap. So they kind of rushed into that trap, and then, didn't go well for them. So there's like a whole bunch of, they could be fired upon at close range and bayoneted, stuff like that at that point. Go this way. But like I said, the two accounts don't really disagree with each other. They could both be true. One just a little more detailed about what happened. But that whole concept of showing a weak point in your front lines as a trap is a common tactic throughout history. It just lures the enemy in. They can't help but rush in. They see that weakness, the line weakening. Sometimes it's not a trap, and it can be a glorious victory for that side that chose to infiltrate that weakness, but sometimes it's a trap. But anyway, it was a decisive victory for Bouquet. He lost about 50 British soldiers, which if you do the math, about 10%, which isn't a terrible loss. It could have been worse. They don't know how many Native Americans died. They don't really even know how many numbers showed up to the fight or how many died. It's just the way it is. They didn't exactly keep records. But after that battle, Bouquet was able to make it to Fort Pitt. We're actually not that far from it. Because all that flour they brought, the sheep and the cattle, wasn't necessarily all for his troops. Remember, they were trying to relieve Fort Pitt, which was under siege. They run out of food and supplies, so all that food and supplies was largely for the soldiers at Fort Pitt. He was able to make it there to drive off the forces surrounding Fort Pitt and to relieve the fort. So the Battle of Bushy Run pretty much ended the conflict here in Pennsylvania. The war itself, the rebellion itself, continued on into 1764. In some cases even beyond then, into 1766. The Indians continued to flee west into Ohio and the Illinois area, and the British kept trying to, subdue them. But yeah, Bouquet went on. I think he fought in those territories out that way too. The final chapter of this too would be that in 1764, as part of the agreement, the treaty that was made, the Indians agreed to release hostages. If you remember, they took tons of hostages, mostly children, during those raids in 1755, 56 especially. But part of the terms of surrender was for them to deliver up those hostages, and they were brought back. Because we talked about that one story, the one girl, what was her name? I forget her name offhand now. The one girl they brought back, she'd been gone for like 7 years, and her mother, they didn't recognize each other. She didn't recognize her mom didn't recognize her. She probably didn't really speak English anymore, but her mom started singing that German hymn that she'd sang to the kids when they were little. And the little girl recognized the hymn that her mom was singing, and then they reunited. That was kind of a cool story. I took you to that grave. Her older sister was Barbara. And then there was the younger, I forget her name offhand. I'll probably think of it later. Anyway, that's kind of ends the chapter though, for here in Pennsylvania. Battle of Bushy Run. Like I said, it continued on in other states, but for our series of here in Pennsylvania, this is where it ends. But once again, this is a beautiful place to go hiking. Look at that trail, just looks super inviting. Quite a few trails here. Like I said, even if you're not into history, looks like a really nice place. If you live closer, I'd probably hike here more often. There's trails going off everywhere too. So like I said, this does bring an end to our series on the French and Indian War / Pontiac's War. Doesn't mean I won't ever do another video on this topic. You know, if I find something new or something interesting or some place I can go to, I'll definitely add to this series. But for now, you know, we're gonna stop like pursuing this series in a way, if that makes sense. Kind of bring an end to it here. And we will be starting our Revolutionary War series coming up. I have a few videos about some precursors to that war. We're going to talk about the Black Boys Rebellion and some other things leading up to the Revolution. Alright, but I think that'll be it for me here in Bushy Run. Beautiful place. I got a number of things I'm going to film here, Westmoreland counties into Somerset counties. So hopefully I see you there. But thanks for joining me on this series. If you followed me the whole time with it, it's been a fun series. I loved doing this series. Not a lot. I feel like the French and Indian War is one of those forgotten wars that nobody really talks about a whole lot. A lot of history isn't known about, so that's why I was really interested in doing this series. So thanks for coming along with me. Hopefully I'll see you on some others. Thanks for watching.